Welcome to the Reach Out Radio broadcast, podcast, internet, audio, video, radio experience and experiment here on the Voice 17104. And it's a Friday, which is weird if you pay attention to our show because we're never here on a Friday. We've been doing Wednesdays pretty much absolutely every time since we've begun over 3 years ago. And yet we are here on a Friday because of the 4th of July and because, of some inclement health on the 4th of July on my part. But, back and hopefully better than ever. And, it's again a sweltry day here at the Voice 17104. One can feel the condensation bead on the skin. And with me in the studio is, of course, my main man, John Lennon himself. No, no, that's Bill.
John Lennon.
That's Bill Jameson himself.
Oh no.
Welcome.
Yoko. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. You know,
For the Beatles' problems.
yeah, I don't think they were all her fault.
No.
I think she was actually a really fascinating artist in and of herself.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, you see her development if she wasn't with the Beatles.
Yeah, then they just got very close, and it happens. And
Yeah.
their interests diverged from the
Well,
rest of the band.
the Beatles had their own, and that they didn't want to fess up to problems. Just amongst themselves, groups do that. I mean, they're human beings. They're people who come together, and for the rest of us, they're a group. But for those involved, they're individuals, each with their own proclivities and desires. Consequently, like a lot of other groups, we have little conflicts here and there, little bickerings that go on here and there. And when you get somebody who come into the group who is an outsider, they become very much the scapegoat.
Apparently, that was very much the case throughout. It's I don't know. Would you put them in the category of that kind of pre-processed pop band of today, where they were just assembled by some kind of talent scout, much like K-pop? Do you know K-pop much?
Yeah,
Korean pop, which is like an industry in and of itself, or were they just
very much with some stuff that was in it itself. They whether or not I don't know how they actually came together. And I know that along the way, one or two had they all presented a little bit different musicality, and I think that was a part of their real special appeal is that they were able to flow between various almost genres.
yeah, very interestingly? And I just watched, I believe it's called Explained on Netflix, an episode on K-pop, and that's one of the very characteristics of that too. They will include perhaps 6 or 7 genres within one piece of music, and yeah, of course, I mean they're good-looking young men
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
They're very appealing to audiences all around the world, and they had both the serious and somber songs, but they also had just the fun, happy, light, poppy songs too.
yeah.
And then they had the catchy beat, and of course, they were great showmen and
Absolutely.
great musicians.
They were a
Well,
great show.
okay,
Yeah, yeah. Did you
they
ever
were
you
they were
saw
good
the
musicians.
Yellow Submarine? Liveliness. You see their real special appeal in terms of their liveliness. They tend to look like life itself. They have that
I
a
heard
happy life. I mean, not struggling life.
no, and the ability to turn, just the everyday toils of everyday life into some sort of triumph of good over evil, and
Yeah,
like some sort of, you know,
yeah.
vision quest, which is what small bit I've seen about Yellow Submarine. Are they re-releasing it too, or remastering it too,
Oh,
or
are they?
something?
That would
It's
be nice.
it's
I'd like
something
to
like
see it
that.
again. It's been a long time.
But from what I've seen, it's just like they translate their songs into cartoon form, which
Yeah.
I mean
But
that's a fun idea.
the thing is, I mean, when we see it now, these are all these years later. If you could imagine how innovative that was for that time, at that time, they were doing something that looked totally new to us. And I will admit, but they brought it home with this blend of Town and Real Town.
Yeah, no, that's really something. And it was such a big thing, of course, when people just
Yes.
knew and saw it. It was pretty crazy.
And it's a very interesting look at ourselves when he was killed and what we were doing as a country and as a security agencies, etc., and the concerns that we had about an individual whose ideas simply were different. You know, we have to say he was mistreated.
Are you talking about Lenin or Sirhan Sirhan?
Yeah, you can include him too. Yeah, but Lenin, I mean, I don't know if it were genuine. It was certainly not without certain elements.
Well, he was big in the anti-war movement in Vietnam, right?
We started to deport him and ran into our own laws. And
Well, when the government tells you to shut up, you best shut up.
not in a democracy with the First
Well,
Amendment.
well, I mean, come on now.
Well, hey, happy 4th of July. By
This
the way.
is a government that told Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself and expected
yeah.
him to follow through.
Well, yeah.
What kind of audacity, what kind of boldness do you think that you have that you can tell a man to end his own life and expect him to do it?
Well, I think that's just really not so much audacity as the expected norm.
Save us the trouble?
Well, hey, look, how much respect in our treatment of black people and even, I'll say, white people, for example, who are socialists, uh, people who disagree vehemently with capitalism. They all fall into that same category of being told to kill themselves, falling out of windows that it said they jumped. You know, it's not an aberration.
No,
When you look at our history,
it is. It is.
I-
And we here 242 years later, after we have declared our independence from the tyranny of tyranny, Great Britain herself, the Queen Mother, as a king at that time, though, King George the Third,
Yeah,
he of the what kind of poison did he have at the time?
it was a Novichok.
Him of the blue pea.
I don't know. It was a Novichok.
No, maybe, no, no. I don't think they had that back then.
No, they had things that were just as deadly.
Mhm.
You know, man has always been very clever with poisons.
Yeah, we're good at it.
You know,
So here we sit, these 242 years later, over 2 centuries, nearly a quarter of a millennium. Wow. Just, think about that for a moment. And yeah, in the grand scheme, perhaps, of China and other great, pretty much by any definition of an empire that we get into, we are in the full throes of empire. Empires don't tend to last that long, especially in today's fast paced world.
well, empires. How many countries have really tried to become empires? I mean, China, for example, had opportunity to become at least imperialistic and actually withdrew from it. I'm talking about centuries ago. You know, they withdrew in a way into themselves, and they had to be forced back out into the open by the British, whose empire the sun never sat on. But we can name the empires. You know, the Roman Empire. Maybe you could call Alexander what he did an empire. Maybe you could call what the Greeks did in general something of an empire. But they were always challenged. But then when you get to the modern empires, there are very few. You know, Germany certainly had imperialistic tendencies, but they never became an empire. You know, England was the empire in which there hasn't been too many empires.
No, there have not. Often want to be an empire. They just want to live their
Right,
lives. They don't want to have to
right.
get all the money and the resources that they could otherwise have contributing to their
Yeah,
education and their health care
right.
and their infrastructure and their general well being turned towards expansionism and turned towards war and turned towards death. I'm hearing fireworks in the background.
Yeah,
It's the 6th It is now July 6th, and we still have people putting off fireworks. July 4th was just chock full of fireworks. I We listened to them for like 8 hours straight. People are just rolling with those things.
There's a excessive celebration on some ends, and the interesting thing about it is that fewer people participate. You know, they took a survey this year, as they did for many years, and they asked Americans, "Are you extremely proud on this Fourth of July to be an American?" And you know, only 47% of Americans said that they were extremely proud at this time to be an American. To give you an example, just some short years ago, it was 70%. And just, why are people less proud today to be an American? They
Well, that's a
did on the corporate TV, and I do say corporate TV. The respondents were saying, the respondents that they used, that it's because of Donald Trump. It's because of the politics. And it didn't ring true to me that they would have been falling off for the last 15 years, and we can blame Donald Trump.
Yeah, but we can blame Donald Trump for everything, right?
We have to take a look at America. There was a respondent, a black woman, who said that we seem to be more separate now. I didn't know understand what she meant by now.
Yeah, that's what always gets me. We always have this division, and we've always had this division. And to say that we are more separate now, and divided in order to just distract from the true conflict.
Yeah. But people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied because they don't have a consumer power. In other words, they have small income compared to what their rent is, or their student loan is, or the cost of food, or the cost of last at least 20 years. And I'm sure I could go back to 1980 if I want to look at statistics and take into account the cost of living.
Well, the buying power of the dollar is minuscule compared to 20 years ago, but even more so, much more so, the economy of 40 or 50 years ago, especially post war. Well, I guess that'd be 70 years ago now, post World War II, with that big time buying power. But of course, many of those socialistic style programs are more so geared towards white people,
Well,
and many people, many
but
other
white
races
people,
were just let out, left out.
interestingly enough, white people are dissatisfied. I think the most dissatisfied group, interestingly enough, is becoming white men. And I'm talking about white high income blue collar, or higher income but low income for the white collar. You know what I'm saying? They make more than blue collar, but they make less than real people who are making management money. Uh,
Because they were seemingly, they think they were promised more and they
they
expected
were.
more.
They expected more, and they're losing. They're losing, and they're losing. You know, and not only are they losing, but they're not even being recognized. You know,
And I think that right there is a huge problem, especially within the left. And if you want to call the Democratic Party the left, just
I
this,
don't.
indeed, just this dismissal of people on that side of the spectrum, that white working class poor, or just the working poor in general, as deplorable, just as dismissing them as, when the Democratic Party really lost its leftness, if it ever had any, when it went away from labor and ventured more to the side of corporate and
Not more
international.
to. They went in with both feet slamming. Are you
Yeah, they
kidding
didn't
me?
they didn't dangle their toes. They
No.
dove.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is, look, we are not stupid. You know, people can realize that it doesn't take a Martin Luther King message over and over again for people to understand that if you keep spending your money on weapons of war and not on programs of social benefit, that you will in fact become.
More on weapons of destruction than on programs of social uplift, approaching spiritual death. And I believe many in this country would deny that, there is even spiritual death possible, because I don't know. That's a
No,
whole other question, though.
there was a time when you talk about when people were proud of America. You remember there was a time when they said we had the best schools. You remember there was a time when they said we had the best roads. You remember there was a time they said we had the best trains and we had the best transportation system, and we were the people who brought about the innovative airplanes and beautiful new airports.
Well, you sound like Trump now.
I sound like a
We
person
got the
who
best.
is saying that we had at one time the pride of being, we thought, the best.
Well,
And
that
when
is
you
actually.
look around the world now and you look at China with 275-mile-an-hour trains, bullet trains that they're building all over the doggone Silk Road, and you look at Russian airports and you look at, I, doggone, I mean, you go travel around the world these days, and so many don't go to the Middle East. We are not investing in ourselves, and we are watching the country fall apart, and nobody can watch their country fall apart with pride.
Well, when you talk about pride and you talk about national pride and you talk about even nationalism, which I think is a have achieved
Well, yeah,
things for which we actually strive, not for some grand idea and not for some dominant posture around the world.
well, not
Why
for
not
money.
be proud of the best hospitals in the world? Be proud of the best universities, the best healthcare system, the best infrastructure, the best water, the best roads, the least carbon producing energy production. Of course, we don't have any of that, and we're
No,
not striving for it. So I mean, that's
and
why
we're
we're not
falling
proud of
behind.
it.
We're actually falling behind. You know, when was the last time you were overseas? It's been a while for me. But even then,
Oh yeah, a
I went
while.
into airports like in Copenhagen, and I was astounded. You know, I was astounded by that airport. I went into airports in countries where I said, "Wow, and the tunnel is so beautiful." You know, and where are we? What the best is falling apart, and the citizens themselves are apart. And if you are complaining about the deterioration around you, and someone comes to you and say, "Hey, bro, are you extremely proud of being
Be
in?"
an American where at least you know you're
Yeah,
free
right.
and you're proud to live, to give the life, to give the
Yeah,
life to
yeah,
me,
yeah,
etc., etc.
yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. You got to take stock. You got to be honest about it, and you got to really think about what you want for your country. And which is a big reason why one of my topics today is declaring a new Declaration of Independence. And what do we want that to be?
Hmm. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, no,
You,
it's a big question.
here's an interesting event. Talk about the Declaration of Independence. Facebook has these algorithms, and they pick out these words that are hate speech words
And I would just like to shout out to Facebook's algorithms to really, I don't know, give a little more props to our show.
that actually took off of its web. What do you call it? They
Yeah.
took off of their post. They took down the post on the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America.
Mhm.
It contained words in reference to the savage Indians. Now that was hate speech when we talked about the savage Indians. But it took down the Declaration of Independence. It took down the historical reference to what this whole thing is all about. It took down what is history that we should learn from, and just acted as though it didn't exist because it found a reference in it that was historical hate speech.
That's a lot like the textbook authors in Texas publishing that slavery was economic indentureship
Yeah.
or economic servitude,
People
whatever the case.
people were economic immigrants.
Oh, can't use the
We
word
got on the
immigrants
slave
either.
slip because we were an
Hmm.
economic immigrant.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
please.
things that it's also been said once again using religion to just meet Jesus when we brought them over on the slave ships. At least they got to expand and burn their cities. Well,
The heathens.
if you're
Those were
bringing
heathens,
if
right?
you're if that's how you're bringing Jesus to a people, what are they going to think of him? Is that really what you want? We're not Constantine, are we? It's not.
Mm.
It's not the method, is it?
I want to mention, Shantai mentioned, since we're talking about slavery in particular, and it's impossible to talk about Independence Day without talking about slavery, and it's impossible to talk about Independence Day without talking about the Native Americans.
Indeed, indeed.
The white people who had power were so incredulously stupid that they asked Frederick Douglass to speak in 1854, 18, 1852 it was,
Mm.
even 2 years earlier. 9 years before we even started thinking about having a war and free slaves, if we indeed did think about that, they asked him to speak on Independence Day in Rochester, New York. Or you would say they just don't know what they do. Forgive them, God. For they certainly don't know what they do. They think that they I can't say it almost. The crap comes out in cellophane. You know, it
Mm.
all stinks. Frederick Douglass stood before the crowd. He said, "Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today?" He said in this speech, "Do you intend to mock me? Is that why I'm here? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence?" He asked. "Are the great principles of political freedom and natural justice embodied in us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offerings to the national altar
Mm.
and to confess the benefits and express halting from your independence to us?" Now, he did say, y'all got a lot of nerve for inviting me here. And he goes on in this speech, very much, I say, in the way that the Declaration laid out its grievances towards England, he laid out his grievances as a slave to America. And he listed them and he explained them, and I won't read them all, but I would ask you all to go and look up Frederick Douglass' Independence Day speech in 1852. He concludes, "For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not as astonishing planting and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, of brass,
Mm.
of iron, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers,
Mm.
and that we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, fleeing sheep and cattle in the hillsides, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living, living in families, as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave. We are called upon, we are being called upon," he says. Yet, despite all this reality, we are being called upon to prove that we are men. That we are men. Or to put it another way, to simply prove that black.
So, Bill, uh, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What was the title of that speech?
What was the title? "What to the slave is the 4th of July."
What to the
To the slave
slave is the 4th
is the 4th
of
of July.
July?
Right. What is it? I mean, what does it mean to me? I can answer that question because I still feel the slave mentality.
Nothing.
It means nothing.
or it means a reflection of the tyranny from which we wish to be free, reflected upon others by ourselves.
Look, you know, over this 4th of July
Hmm.
in North Carolina, some guy by the name of Bloom goes to this black woman. I'm trying to think of her name. It doesn't come to me easily. Jeanette, something. I can't. But she and her child are swimming in the pool. And he goes to her, I want to see your ID. What are you doing here? You can't be in this pool because this pool is for rich people. She says, I live here. I'm a resident of this complex. Therefore, I'm entitled to use the pool. You know, he called the police, of course. And the police responded, of course. Interestingly enough, in this case, the policeman, I think, was a calming influence. But still, they went through a ridiculous set of inquisitive questions, challenges, humiliations. You know, let me see your ID. She shows her ID. How did you get into the pool? With my pool pass. Let me see if the pool pass works. He puts it in the gate and the gate opens. Well, it might not be hers. You know, extending the humiliation into the sublime before the policeman finally, like, it cuts it off. And the guy tells the woman, it's okay for today. You know, that
Just
was
for
Mr. Bloom
today.
for today. And that was in North Carolina. In South Carolina, it's a white woman. They call
Mm.
her pool patrol Paula. You know, two black teens invited to swim in the pool by people who live in the complex, are approached by this woman and called the N word, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want you here. You understand? You know, there's, if you go online and click on these, because right now with cell phones and whatnot, what used to happen all the time and nobody like was mentioned, because this is life for black people in America. This is not new. You know,
This element of hyperconnection, if we have no positive or negative value to it, it is just exposing.
yeah, it's
It
exposing.
makes things very transparent,
Right,
inevitably.
right. So now you see how black people are being treated. If you were able to deny it before, now in America, on this 4th of July, on this Independence Day, on this day recognizing the question that Frederick Douglass asked, what is your Independence Day to me? What is your Independence Day in North Carolina, and
Nah,
South Carolina, and California, and all these places where we could talk about these kinds of incidents?
it ain't nothing.
It ain't nothing, bro. You know, it ain't nothing. But America, you are revealed. It is not necessary for us to try to say over and over again to the denial of white people and how we're being told that we're just plain crazy, hallucinogenic, or whatever it is that we all imagine that these white people don't like us. You know, the obvious, more obvious, and more obvious statement being made about America is we don't want you in our public spaces. We don't want you in our parks barbecuing.
Oh, I remember
Yeah,
that.
you
Those
know.
two men, were they actually arrested? Did they
Yes.
actually fully arrest
You
them?
know, we don't want you at our Starbucks for a meeting.
For 10 minutes,
Yeah.
for 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes before they called the cops.
You know, we don't want you here. Well, what the heck did you go through all that trouble to bring us here for? When I was a kid, there was a pool that we couldn't go to. We used to go to Shunk Pool, and there was another pool that was in very easy walking distance. As a matter of fact, it was shorter a walk than Shunk Pool, which was on 11th and Mifflin. We couldn't go to that pool. That was the white pool, you know. And a couple
Yeah.
of times we decided that we would go over there, and they couldn't refuse to let us come in. But when we were swimming in the water, people would come out of nowhere and kick us and punch us, and you know, and you couldn't fight the whole gang of them. And eventually, you know, you got tired of getting pushed and kicked, and you just left. You
Understandably.
know, that was my experience growing up. You know, that was how I saw America. It was white and black. It was we can't go to that pool over there even though it's closer. It was we cannot go to that school over there even though it's closer and better.
Yeah. Hmm. And did you see the second Civil War hashtags this last weekend,
No, I didn't.
where a lot of liberals got together and said, "Well, let's hashtag a second Civil War because I think someone on the right said that this was that liberals were planning the beginning of a second Civil War for July 4th of this year."
I heard that rumor someplace, but
And then
I didn't know.
there was just the mockery and the
Mm.
joking and the way that people play it off in the cynical way that allows us yet again to sidestep the issues that truly affect our country.
Well, I don't think. Look, I don't think that we want to be different in America. I look. You want to talk about the most persistent things in this country? You know, they come generation after generation after generation, and they operate at the same level. You know, basically, we have more people enslaved now to the prison system than we had, you know, in the 1852 when Frederick Douglass was talking.
We are, of course, the leader worldwide in both incarceration rate and incarceration total, and
Mm-hmm.
undoubtedly in number of people interned in private prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Do they even exist around the world? I guess. I don't
I
know.
would guess that people who would imitate us or who we influence and make imitate us, you know, that's the legacy of Bill Clinton. You
Yeah.
know, they they came up with this mandatory sentencing and increasing the prison population and privatizing prisons.
Mhm.
You know, and somehow or another he was calling himself the first black president, and black people, a lot of black people, were actually falling for it, while they were calling us super predators, and we were listening to him play the saxophone as if it had meaning.
He of the Corrections Corporation of America
Yes,
and later Core Civic.
yeah, yeah. This
He
guy,
of the instigator of the well, he didn't instigate, but he was a big leader of the three strikes rule and the
he
increase of
right.
instead of catering to the left, the actual labor and to the people, he decided to cater to the law and order crowd.
Well, I
Same
mean,
way
look,
with Hillary.
he was that group. Period. I mean, uh,
That's who he
outside
was.
he was. I mean, look, you go there and you say, hey, who in the world set up the 2000? And did you change the rules on Wall Street? When did you change the rules for bankers? When did you wildly and speculatively, and not having banks and investment banks being a different thing? Who was it who changed that?
Calvin Coolidge,
Well, we had the depression,
Herbert Hoover.
and because of the depression, we had some certain, you know, oversight rules put in place.
And we are just currently in the process of having so many of those oversight rules, which were still around somehow, that we're just still having them decimated
Well,
now.
we came with some modified, watered down versions of them that we are still even fighting about those.
Mm.
You know, and because of where the banks are going in terms of reinventing these kinds of schemes and scams that they are famous for, we're going back down that same road all over again. So you can expect another 2008.
In the second declaration, I would suggest corporate and factional.
Mm-hmm.
I have every vote.
Would
I know
every
how
vote
I'd like
count?
it to work,
Every vote count.
but we're so far from a and
We should imitate the Venezuelan model.
and
That's the most transparent election that they have in this world is in Venezuela,
well, what
and
is that?
everybody votes. Huh?
How does that work?
How does it work?
Mhm.
That that everybody votes?
No, the Venezuela model.
Oh, that's how it works. Everybody votes. Everybody has their idea, and everybody votes, and they do all vote, and they are very transparent
How do you enforce
in
that?
how they
Though?
count it. Huh?
How do you enforce that?
Well, ask Billy Carter. He's the one who gives him the highest rating. I mean, Jimmy Carter. Billy was his brother who sold the beer. Uh, Jimmy Carter and his outfit that goes around evaluating elections gives Venezuela the highest transparency rating of all the elections.
But but Chavez.
The guy who we couldn't beat in an election, and so we had to pull a coup against him. And we're in that same posture again. Was the most transparent, and we say it was not a fair election because the people didn't vote, and so they say there was no challenge. It was not a fair election because they a different story than Pompeo or what's that other guy's name, Bolton, John, and even the president, Trump. They all say that they're going to go down there and invade Venezuela. So that let me explain something. In 2002, Chavez comes in. He came in 2002, 2001. Yeah, 2001. He's already in office a year before we pulled this coup.
Mhm.
And we go down there at gunpoint and we take out Chavez. That's what we did, in fact. Okay? Now we institute this government that we want, and they're going to write a new constitution. Do you know what the first line in the industry will be privatized? And that tells you in Venezuela what we are interested in. It's as simple as that. And we want it to be privatized, owned by private individuals and not by the citizens of Venezuela, not by the nation, the people who would share in its resources as Chavez thought they should, but that individuals who we pick and choose who are our friends should make that profit and not the nation as a whole, not the people as a whole. Chavez pulled 50% of his people out of poverty in the first 2 years. We don't like that.
Well, we cannot even let an inkling of any kind of successful socialist experiment ever work. If there is one breath of life in such a thing, we must crush it. I mean, look at Cuba. They're more communist, of course, but
Mm.
look at them. Some of the best healthcare in the world,
Best healthcare, best preventive medicine,
education.
best education, best urban gardening. If you want to learn something about urban gardening, go to Cuba.
If you can.
Well, you're supposed to be able to now, sort of,
Yeah.
maybe.
And you can't go to Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, or there's another one.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can't go there anymore.
Well, that's the Supreme Court said that Donald is right. Actually, they said that Donald had the power to make those rules. But talking about the socialism,
Hmm.
I'm watching the Democrats. They try to use the image of Bernie Sanders as if he's one of their own. They're trying to appeal to socialists these days.
I mean, look, Bernie tried to use them. Props to him. Hey, I get it. Like it almost worked somehow.
Yeah, but they're trying to act as though they are supportive. Not like they're opposed.
You know what? If they were, that'd be cool.
Well, if they were,
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
And they act as though they're supportive of what's her name, Gloria something Cortez in the Bronx. What's her name? 28
Alexandria Cortez
bartender.
Ocasio.
Yeah,
Ocasio Cortez.
Ocasio Cortez. Uh, they are the word is out that she is not what she portrayed herself to be as a girl of the Bronx, but pretty much a well-off child of an architect, etc. But
Mm.
somehow or another, she embraces socialist philosophies. People worry about where her money comes from while she's embracing socialist philosophies, and they wonder about the Democratic Party then trying to embrace a socialist here and there to say that they have a big tent, which is what the Democratic Party, if you recall, was invented to do in the first place. It was to co-opt socialism. It was to bring those socialists into a established party and control them. And they did that very well. And they did have a big tent because they invited the unions, they invited the blacks, etc., into that tent. And then once everybody got into that tent, they of course went south. They went to the establishment
Mhm.
and left those people in that tent by themselves. But now they're trying to say, look at us. We have a big tent. We have Alexander Cortez and we have Bernie Sanders. And yet, They still doing everything
Mhm.
the same way that they were doing it, and they're having a problem, and this is their problem. They have a problem of walk away. They have a problem of people walking away from the Democratic Party. They have a problem of people recognizing that they are not being recognized within that establishment, and they're walking away. And they're not all just like walking away to become GOP or walking away to become Trump people. They're walking away fed up.
They chase the money, and they lost.
They lost. And they're continuing to lose. And they're facing a real difficult situation right now because it's becoming a landslide. What do you call it? A rolling stone, and it's gathering all kinds of moss.
An
I mean,
avalanche.
there's an avalanche. I mean, this thing is becoming major. The number of people who are dropping away from that party.
Well, absolutely so. And one thing, uh, it was the craziest thing. I read an op-ed piece in the New York Times of all places, and they're saying like this: the millennial socialists are coming,
Yeah, right on.
and the opinion of this woman was not that this was like some far flung like flight of fancy as had been said and perceived in years past, but the fact that they see the grim and bleak reality that they're currently entrenched in, and they see possible answers to that in reassigning the means of production, in actually redistributing wealth, in just changing the whole system, because the current system with its current momentum is trending in a completely other direction.
In the party, I mean, they could even start by this. Here's a notion. I know this is silly, but they could even start by listening. You see, the
That's a lot of work.
the way that you have a big tent is to listen to all those voices, whether they're Tower of Babel or whatever they are. You learn to listen to those voices because you have invited them into your big tent. But what we have is a Democratic Party that makes its policy at the top. It's the establishment party that makes the policy. It's the establishment politicians that makes the policy.
Mhm.
And then what do they do with that policy? They sell it. They PR it to those different groups under their tent through a process of identity politics. Will we give this message to the black group? Will we give this message to the transits? You know, will we give this message to white blue collar? Consequently, they
Except,
have no policy and no message for anyone.
except there are groups to whom they don't speak at all,
Well, yeah.
especially the white blue collar.
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying, look, I'm not, claiming any sort of special, you know, terrible circumstances for white blue collar individuals, but at the same time, that was a big power base, and they just ignored it,
Well, I
and
do.
now they're reaping the benefit, or they're reaping
I
the
do. In a way, I
detriments.
mean, there's a lot of problems that I've always had with white blue collar, well, men, etc.
Sure.
But a lot of it too is also the way they're portrayed. For example, when they show the construction workers beating up the peace marches, you know, and they glorify the construction workers as being American and the peace marches being into intellectual nabobs or something, that gives me bad feelings about them. But look, most of the white middle class fell for the American narrative that they can have an American dream and they could work hard and become anything they want in America. And they sold that to their kids and they raise their kids accordingly,
Yeah.
you know. And then you take the jobs away through, they call it globalization, whatever you want to call it. We still today are talking about jobs that are going to Mexico, even though they're making a good profit here and they're doing good work here. Who is that makes the air conditioners and they just moved, you
We
know?
could call it wealth consolidation. We could
Okay.
call it trickle up economics.
Okay. Well, these people got tricked. They were the cannon fodder. When you ever need troops, you go get those white boys. You know, whenever you need somebody to stand up there and march and wave the red, white, and blue, you go get those white boys.
Mm.
And now you got those white boys out of work, and you keep selling them opiates and acting though like they're not drug dealers. They are the highest risk of suicide in this country right now. You know, white blue collar is having a tough time, and I hate to see anybody go through what they're going through because they are talking seriously when they say rust belt. They mean rust. It
Mhm.
means the machinery stopped. The
It's
jobs stopped.
it's okay though. They'll soon have robots to replace those workers,
Yeah,
and then we're all
yeah.
doomed.
You're right, right, right.
And one other thing, free education, free
Yeah,
healthcare, free internet.
yes,
Declaring it,
yes.
but also a next step into our next topic, a segue, or a building block, whatever. Declaring
Can,
our non-expansionism.
can I say one thing before we leave 4th of July here?
Yes, but let me finish this
Go ahead.
phrase though.
Go ahead.
An end to imperialism.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
and I want to come back to that one because I
Yeah.
like to talk about it some. But on the 4th of July, we had an incident that sticks out. This lady was part of a demonstration, 7 to 9, I don't remember the number, at the Statue of Liberty on Ellis Island in New York.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And she climbed onto the base of the statue. Now, they charge her with trespassing, which I don't understand, and maybe someday they. I mean, it's a national monument. Trespassing on a national monument. We're not allowed to touch national monuments, or what? I mean,
yeah.
it's in an area where people actually walk around and so forth. I mean, so you're allowed to be in that area. The only thing she did different from what the other people was that she climbed up 20 feet higher. Now, okay, let's say it is against the law to climb up 20 feet higher on the base of a statue. Okay, does that constitute a security threat? This one little lady sitting up there on this base of this statue, is that a security threat that you have to evacuate 4,000 people from the island? Please.
Probably not.
No, it is not. It's the thing where you go over there and you talk to the lady. You know, you send two guys over there, or a guy or a gal or whatever, and you talk to the lady. You talk to her like she's a human being and come to some kind of an understanding, for crying out loud. She doesn't plan to spend the rest of her life up there, but pretend that this is a security threat. And all your security forces have to come out in this big demonstration of macho heroism on 4th of July. This is your idiocy. This is what your security is about. One lonely little old lady sitting at the base of a national monument,
Mm.
and she is a security threat to the nation. God bless America. I had to get that out.
How old was she?
44, I think.
Okay. Hey, good for her.
Yeah, she's in pretty good 44-year-old shape.
And just a note to anyone who might be interested, we have a replica of the Statue of Liberty out in the Susquehanna near the town of Dauphin. So if anyone wants to climb that and get on the news, make a protest statement, it's right there. Do it up.
Would somebody look up this trespassing on a national monument for me and let me, because I don't understand it. I swear to you.
Mm.
It seems to me that the national monuments belong to me and you and you, but they're ours to cherish and keep and embrace if we want to climb there and touch her skirts, or embrace her feet.
Absolutely right.
I can remember times when we climbed up on statues all over Philadelphia. There's statues in Philadelphia all over the place, and we climbed every one of them. Nobody ever arrested
Mm. That's lucky, I guess.
us. I guess so. Welcome to America. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh
Imperialism.
no.
Uh,
Well, great point. But uh, my final, and not my final, but for now my final declaration of independence would be an end to imperialism. And then in your notes, you asked a good question. since 1893, which I don't know, like that's some kind of seminal year. That's right after the election of McKinley, right?
Yeah,
He was
that's
very expansionist.
well, they all were. You know, that's when we were
Sure,
right.
that's true.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all of them. Who was Secretary of Navy? Roosevelt. You know, and who was the Navy Secretary? No, he was Undersecretary. Navy Secretary Thomas T. Mahan. You know, all these people fostered imperialism, and they recognized. They said that we needed to have refueling stations around the world in order to have a strong navy. That's why we wanted Guam. That's why we wanted the Philippines, etc. Because if you were going to send your ships around the world, you had to have they ran on coal, and so you had to have stockpiles of coal in certain places around the world. That was the impetus for the navy, but the impetus for capitalism was even stronger because the nation could outproduce itself. In other words, the nation's industry could produce more than what the nation needs. So what do we need then? If that's the case, in order for me to make money, I need a market. You know, for example, then you get people saying, "Hey, China is the natural market for American products. Therefore, we have to capture China." You hear the impetus? Markets. Imperialism in 1893 is about markets and refueling stations. You know, it's about taking the material off of those islands that are in the Pacific and around Japan and recognizing that even though the Japanese depend on those resources, that if we can be the power, you know, then the Japanese would not have access. That's why they came up with this notion of Asian. I forget what they call it. The Japanese plan was to unite Asia, and they got into these stupid wars and genocidal wars, you know, trying to unite Asia against the West.
Although, Bill, we'd have to look pretty far back to find a time when imperialism was not extremely connected with that kind of capitalist market expansion. We'd have to look far back.
Well, yeah,
Dutch East India Company,
Dutch East
British
India
East
countries,
India
sure,
Company,
sure. The reason for how about
Christopher
how about
Columbus.
bullionism as a motivation? You know, for the age of discovery.
It's almost as
You know,
bad as the Age of Enlightenment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, but the age of discovery was really a lot of it based around bullionism, about going around and killing people looking for gold.
Killing people looking for gold. So in this equation, gold is more important than people.
Yes, because empires were built on gold, not people.
Has anyone ever just tried to build an empire on people?
No,
Not on the blood of people, but on
no,
actually raising up people.
no,
Not even Rome.
no, not especially not Rome.
No.
No, no, especially not Rome.
Mm-mm.
And that in a way that's what killed Rome too. I mean, they used to say that Romans they would let you practice whatever it is that your religion was, or whatever it is your local customs were, as long as you paid the taxes.
Mhm.
But that was not really true. I mean, you look at England. Just go to England, for example, today, and see the remnants of what Rome was. You can still see it today. You see it in roads and castles and moats, and you know how dominant.
Mhm.
Even people. You know, because a lot of the people in certain areas of England are left over from the Romans, not
Mhm.
from the Celts and some of them, of course, are from the Vikings. I
Sure.
mean, England is quite a place.
It's an island in the midst of other islands in a continent. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, racial homogeneity is a myth.
it always has been.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to start with the fact that everybody came out of Africa, where are you going to start with the race? You know, they don't have that discussion because that discussion would start someplace they don't want to start. That would mean that if you started out black and you became white, then what does that say? you know, white people don't want to see themselves like that. You know, so anything. I mean, they're like these people at the pool. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Undoubtedly. So,
Yes, sir.
lots of countries here that you've listed.
We and talking about I had I saw one list that had since 1945 he listed 23 countries that we had invaded since 19 and 25. I mean 45. Then I saw another list actually that I think was a better list. It showed 37 countries that we had invaded since 1945. And then when you go back in our history to countries we have invaded over these years, you know that more than half the countries that we have invaded since World War II. You know, United States since World War II has killed more than 20 million people in 37 victim nations that they counted these 37 nations they counted the victims in
Wow.
since World War II. You know, that's from come from James A. Lucas at Global Research. You know, people go look it up. Uh, but you can go back to some of the most famous and where we developed our modus operandi. I mean, we say from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we talk about fighting the pirates in Tripoli and all that kind of thing, and going down there and taking Montezuma's gold. You know, that's a part of our marine heritage. You know, we will fight our country's battles on the air, land, and sea. You know, we're going to take your gold. Okay. You know, we talk about invading a country like Colombia and splitting it in two to make a Panama so we can have a canal.
And how many countless thousands of people died so we could have a
So we
canal?
can have a canal. And we had to invade a country to make a country so that we could do it. You know, but we didn't mind. I mean, we didn't mind invading countries. We didn't mind when I look at some of the letters of the privates who wrote home from the Philippines, and they talk about in 1917 how they were killing Filipino men, and they said it was better than shooting, and they used the N word. You know,
Yeah.
like what is our mentality? You know, w- listen to some of these since World War II. China, Korea, China, Guatemala, Indonesia, Cuba, Guatemala, Belgium, Congo, Guatemala. See how many times we went to Guatemala? We don't mess around in South America. Dominican Republic,
Mhm.
remember that? Peru, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. And we were in Laos and Cambodia before we were in Vietnam, you know. And there's Guatemala again, Lebanon, Grenada, Libya, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Iran. Remember we invaded Iran in
Yeah.
1987 and 1988?
We did that.
Libya,
I forgot that somehow. I mean, I was six. Still.
Panama, Iraq, Kuwait, Somalia. You know, I'm not, I'm like, I'm not finished with this list. I'm not
No.
going to go on. You know, but think about that. You know, Panama, we invaded it to arrest Noriega. Noriega was our agent, and we had a falling out with him. He was recruited by the H.W. Bush when H.W. Bush was running the CIA. He was running the drug traffic for our CIA.
Mm.
And then we had a falling out with him and invaded the country and killed people and ruined neighborhoods in order to arrest him and bring him to the American jail. You know, in Honduras to help install a military junta. You know, Iraq. This is not even talking about Desert Storm. You know, but
Oh, you
after
mean
Desert
you mean you
Storm,
mean Desert Shield?
yeah, Desert.
Come
But
on.
the no-fly zone, the sanctions that was killing and killing. That's a continued invasion. You know, how many kids did we kill in Iraq between the so-called wars with sanctions and no-fly zones? How many medicines? How many drugs? How many medical supplies? You know, Serbia during the Kosovo War,
Hmm.
Afghanistan. You know, we all know about that. But what are you going to say about Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia? Yemen, Yemen. They said here with drone attacks, we have troops in Yemen.
One of the poorest, just most, I don't know, just vulnerable nations, and we choose to invade it due to the, I don't know, due to the whims of our benefactor. Is that what we want to call Saudi Arabia now? Of our puppet state? But who's the
Is
puppet
it?
state?
Well, who's the puppet is right. That's a good question. Uh, and of Israel, those two together, and those two are partners. You know,
So, just in summation, that's 42 unique countries which we've invaded since our inception. 47 counting Native Americans.
well, if you count Native Americans, you're going to count a lot more than that.
But we have invaded as many countries in the past 50 years as we have for the other 180 of our existence.
hmm Yeah, these lists are not complete.
Picking it up.
Yeah, uh, we, right now, we had Obama. He was fighting in 8 different countries at one time. You know, I don't know if that's a record, but it sounds like a record. I hate to say that because
I
if
hope it's a
Trump hears
record.
about it being a record, then he's going to try to beat it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But this is America. I mean, this is this isn't for nothing. I mean, we're not mentioning these things for nothing, and we're not mentioning them on Independence Day for nothing. We'd be mentioning them because we're talking about the character of our nation, and you're talking about a new Declaration of Independence that we expect to change this character. This is the character of our nation to invade other places at our whim for our reasons, to develop a hegemony since World War II, an imperialism that gives us Time magazine telling us that it is our century. This is
Oh, thank God.
our national character now.
Hmm.
This is, you listen to Eric Fromm, our personality.
Yeah.
You know, this is who we are as a nation. As much as we are a racist nation, we are a warring nation. As much as we were a slave keeping nation, we were a nation that looked at other people's. If you want to talk about, we didn't talk about Mexico when Mexico belonged to Texas. When Texas, I'm sorry, belonged to Mexico. You understand the Mexican American War. We didn't talk about taking Mexico and California and whatnot from the Mexicans, the Spanish who took it from the Indians. you know, we're not talking about taking the land from Indians and marching them on death trails, trails of tears. This is our character. When you look at this history that we're talking about, it covers all the years of America. When you talk about America being at war since World War II, if you were born since 1945, you were born into a country at war. The
Well,
last 17 years, obviously indirect.
you mean it's since 45, it's been a majority of the time we've been at war.
I mean that. But I'm saying also, I said there's hardly any time that you could have been born where we were not at war because all of our, what were those SEAL teams doing? What did we do with those people? They were in how, what, 70 different countries? Remember how shallow this list is now. Remember we saw a figure that the SEALs had been in 70 countries. The SEALs themselves. You know, and I don't doubt it. We don't know about the wars that we wage. But every time you say a SEAL and they're operating someplace, that's a war. That's a country that they're invading. That's people that they're shooting. Those assignments, those guys don't earn that reputation for nothing.
Remember SEAL Team 6 and the atrocities that they
Absolutely.
performed,
Right.
doing that canoeing, doing that going into towns in Afghanistan and shooting civilians for sport.
Right. Yes. Yes. Now, we were always at war, and a lot of our wars are secret wars. They're hidden from the American people. And of course, all of our wars were lying wars where we lied to the American people.
Mm.
You know, and we should be fed up with. I saw Mike Morrell this morning on CBS. They keep talking to him like he's somebody respectable. He was the ex-director, ad hoc director of the CIA. He lied to a president about weapons of mass destruction. He lied and got us into a war. Thousands and thousands of people died, and we talked to him as if he has something precious to tell us. And what did he say?
Hmm.
He said, if we can believe that North Korea is serious. Excuse me, I don't trust your judgment worth 2 cents to me. If we could judge whether or not North Korea is serious. Oh no, they're not serious. All the stuff that they went through and all the stuff that we did to them, they're just fooling around. You know, these kinds of discussions that put us in a position where we're judging everybody else and looking down as if we're the good guys, and they're the ones who have to make it up to us. And these corporate news outlets that sit there with that narrative and act pompous as if that is what we are. They need to take a look at all of these nations that we have invaded since World War II, or all of these nations that we have invaded since we became a nation, and then make a judgment about what kind of people we are and what kind of history we should see ourselves.
Speaking of what kind of nation we are, uh, we have the report from Lancaster of a
Yeah.
27-year-old young man,
Yeah.
Sean Williams,
Yeah.
who was tased in the back while he was sitting on a curb because he did not follow instructions
Mhm.
quickly enough. He was tasered for non-compliance,
You know,
not quickly enough.
well, not
It
even
just wasn't fast
and
enough.
confusing, because he had two different police officers yelling at him, telling him different things. One's telling him to cross his legs, and the other is telling him to extend his legs. Now, do you hear what these directions are? These instructions that they're giving him: extend your legs, cross your legs. That's what he didn't comply to. It wasn't like non-compliance, like he had a knife in his hand and wouldn't drop it and came towards you.
Yeah, but you call it non-compliance. That's the image that is conjured.
He's sitting on the curb with his back to the officer. The officer is standing behind him and yelling. And I don't understand this yelling thing. When you get 4 and 5 and 7 cops around you all yelling at you, how is that supposed to make calm a situation?
Well, quite simply, it's not.
Well,
That's the point.
there's two cops yelling at him, and they're yelling different things. Cross your legs, extend your legs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's confused and don't know what the heck to do.
Yeah.
You know? And then they shoot him with a taser because he didn't follow instructions. And my question, of course, first of all, it comes down to, you're telling me that if a cop tells me to do something and I don't react, that he has the right to shoot me or to hurt me,
That's just how it goes. I
to
guess.
harm me? That just because I didn't follow his instructions, he has the right to harm me? Is that the kind of authority we are giving to our policemen? Do what I say, or I can take you out? This is the authority they have over us? I thought they were our protectors and our servants. I'm stupid.
Did you?
No, I didn't really, but I'm just saying
Come on
that.
now.
You know, but then the mayor says, and she's having a press conference as we speak, that she's going to investigate. Now, you see a guy sitting on the curb, you see two policemen yelling at him, you see the guy still sitting on the curb, and you see the policeman shoot him in the back with a taser. What did she need to investigate? And does she want to use the incident to pay to get money for body cams? And what's body cams going to do about that? It's not the body cams. It's the darn policemen. It's this attitude that they have. It's their attitude that they're God Almighty. And when they say jump, you're supposed to jump. If they say 3 feet, don't jump 2'6". They have the right to take you out on a whim. because you didn't move fast enough, because you didn't listen fast enough, because you didn't comply.
Absolutely right. But also, speaking of compliance and just the attitude with which we treat protesters right now, you heard about the Philly ICE occupation, right?
Yeah, 75 people.
I thought there were more, but
Well,
I know
maybe there was 2 days, so
30 some were arrested.
39.
But then went in and just blew up. Not, I should be careful using that.
Yeah.
They just cleared everyone out. They took their food and water and drank it in front of them. They brought in trash collectors behind them just to clean up all their things, and they just obliterated any resistance. They just came in. I think they brought the SWAT team,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
We no longer have the right, no longer, again, is a questionable term. We do not have the right to peacefully occupy a federal building. I guess that's not news to anyone, but
No,
you know.
but you know what is news, or what? It's not news, but what is becoming really, really terrible is the extremeness of the response. A SWAT team.
Mhm.
A SWAT team is trained to do one thing:
Destroy.
destroy. To put on their vests and all their suits and carry all those big guns and put you out of existence in wherever it is that you're staying. And this is who they bring to threaten a person who exercises their First Amendment rights.
Mhm.
You know, they don't talk to you anymore. Nobody asks you your grievances anymore. Nobody asks you whether or not you're blind or blind. They used to have a conversation. There is no conversation anymore. And my question again comes back to, why is it that the so called law and order is always against the people? Why is it when the people have something to say, the SWAT team comes out? You know, you could talk about the most drastic policy. We're talking about something that's fundamentally wrong. What perspective do you want to go to? A Buddhist, a Hindu, a Christian perspective? That you're mistreating the children. Whose perspective do you want to go to? And you can get out and make a simple statement like that, and they will swat you behind.
Yeah. And on the same note, there was quite a series of marches last Saturday,
Yeah,
keeping families together, tens or hundreds of thousands of people marching across the nation. I don't know. I can't really speak to the effectiveness of it, but it was a large demonstration. It was
mhm,
very visible. I think we had over 500 here.
yeah. I myself, I don't. Right now, I mean, there was a time when we used to demonstrate and all that kind of thing, and I could see effectiveness. I could see even Richard Nixon worrying about a lone demonstrator in front of the White House. Public opinion meant something, but I don't think it does anymore. Like I was talking about the Democrats making policy from top down and not listening to what the other people under that Big Ten had to say. I make the bigger assertion that the nation is filled with people, leaders who make the policy and all those decisions from the top down. And when you try to speak, you have no say so. Whether or not you are an Occupy movement, whether or not you're a demonstration, whether or not you're a Black Lives Matter, they're ignoring Black Lives Matter. They're not responding to it. They're destroyed or tried to destroy Occupy, not to respond to it.
Yeah.
And they are ignoring these demonstrations, even though the political spectrum is on both sides. They still cannot have the people expressing themselves in the streets. And that's the establishment.
Oh, at
You,
this point, the people in Iran have more freedom to protest in the streets.
well, yeah, And that's the establishment. You don't hear Democrats, for example, speaking up for our right to have exercise our First Amendment. I don't hear any of the establishment standing up and saying, "Hey, the people have this right." All of them are on the side of these SWAT responses to First Amendment.
So, yeah,
It makes me lose faith. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I mean, I was out there one time. I was a real advocate, and I mean, I still, I mean, I like to be out with Ned, but at the same time, it really, for me, the real turning point, I think, was Occupy, because
yeah.
I didn't see a movement that had that kind of fervency in a long time, and it involved their own kids.
They just crushed it.
They crushed them. They crushed them, and if they go out there again, they'll crush them again, no matter how just the cause. It's just that the people cannot have the right to speak. That's it.
Yeah. We're talk about the Cleveland terrorist.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. That's a great one. Our FBI. This is not the first time we told this story. What's his name? Pitts.
This man, well, this was 3 years after he tweeted a terroristic
Yeah,
threat.
2015. This guy. Look. There's all kinds of crazy people and all kinds of smart people. There's all kinds of people in this world. But people saying things is nothing like people doing things. You know, for this man in 2015 to send a Facebook, that he admires a Al Cesare or somebody, Al Qaeda or one of these groups,
Yeah.
you know, that's Cincinnati he's then, and he moves to Cleveland. So they're after him for 3 years. It's not like when I say they're after him, it's not like they're looking for clues as to what this goes and building stuff so that he can make terrorist attacks. No, hey, Mr. Pitts, wouldn't you like a bomb? They engage him in these kinds of conversations, and the man, he doesn't have the means. In other words, for example, in order for them to meet with him, they have to buy him a bus pass. In order for them to encourage him to say that he's going to blow something up, they have to go and get him a bomb. And he
Yeah.
doesn't want to touch the
Yeah,
bomb.
there's a word for this. I believe it's entrapment.
It's called entrapment. You're absolutely correct.
We don't believe in that anymore either.
No, we don't believe in that. How many times have we seen the FBI do this? It took them 3 years to get this guy to agree that he would watch something blow up on the 4th of July where they put a car bomb. He agreed to watch bomb. All of these ideas were the FBI's. And they motivated this man who obviously is not, is not, he doesn't belong to.
Yeah, he's mentally ill.
Okay.
He's mentally ill.
He has some problems.
Yeah.
As a lot of these guys who they entrap like that have some problems.
Yeah.
And the guy talks nonsense. He talked. They got tapes of him talking about all kinds of crazy stuff that's impossible to even imagine doing. I mean, and yet they're going to make this a credible arrest and take credit for it. Well, you go FBI, but we already know you like that. I already know you like that because I'm a black man. I know about the Algiers Motel. I know about COINTELPRO.
Hmm.
I know about Martin Luther King. I know about Malcolm X and all the other important people that you have spent all of your time pursuing instead of the criminals who you said didn't exist, like the mafia, The mafia didn't exist, but the greatest threat to America, and you have said it again. Remember, not that long ago, the FBI said that it was a great threat to America, those people who identified themselves as black. If you
Yeah.
identify with a Black is Beautiful campaign or a Black Lives Matter campaign or I like black, then you are on the FBI list. Is there anything more that we need to know about the FBI? Not
Yeah.
me.
Once you get on that list,
Not me.
it's much like we talked about in China with their social credit score. If you're on
Hmm.
an FBI do not, or whatever kind of list, a ban list, some kind of threat list, you are, for one, you're being watched, but for another, you lose a great deal of your rights. You lose many rights. You lose the right to freedom of movement. You lose the right to freedom of expression for the most part, unless they're trying to make you say what they want you to say.
Unless you're a young white boy with a lot of guns and a mental problem, and then they can investigate you and say, "Oh, well, problem," until you go and shoot up a school.
Hmm.
You know, we can remember them doing that twice. They had people with real problems. But, oh no, they didn't see that. But they see if I identify myself as being black and beautiful, that I'm a threat to America. I'm a threat to the national security. And the lady who is sitting at the base of the Statue of Liberty and can't climb any higher is a threat to national security as well. Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Yeah, he was set up. He was set up by the FBI, and even the New York Times recognizes that he was set up by the FBI. And I say that because the New York Times never ever recognizes something like that. You know, and yet the FBI is sticking there, puffing out their chest. The Cleveland FBI chief is saying how great and how grand the work was of his crew to bust this guy who was posing such a great threat
No,
that they had to get him a bus
no.
pass.
I mean, they're good at kissing their own ass.
Yeah, get him a bus pass and a bomb.
Wow.
That's so funny. I mean, come on. If the man wasn't going to go to jail for being stupid, I mean, not realizing that it's criminal what they can do.
So when I first heard that Justice Anthony Kennedy
Mhm.
was to resign, much like many others, I was like, "Oh no, it's too bad." He was a strong clarion liberal voice on the Supreme Court. Of
At least
course,
a
once I
swing vote.
looked into it a little more,
At least a swing vote.
I guess,
Yeah, so that's what. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, um, just his views were liberal on gay rights, abortion, and the death penalty, but not so on voting rights,
Hmm.
gun control,
Hmm.
and of course, he was big. He was a swing vote on Citizens United,
Uh huh.
which, of course, pretty much equated that money equals speech.
Yeah. Sorry that corporations are people,
Yeah.
except that they can't go to jail, or you can unincorporate a corporation. That's a death penalty. Corporations, even though they are people, and even though they might commit harm and murder. That's the one you're talking about.
It's one.
That's that Kennedy. Yeah. Well, but some people are saying he was fired. He's the one who he his son.
Yeah.
You understand? Is a board member of Deutsche Bank, and Deutsche Bank apparently at some point loaned Donald Trump a bunch of money, and somehow or another, people are equating this to collusion and the Russians, and somehow or
Because why
another,
not?
if he remains, and that's what they're saying about the Saints. And that's what they're saying about the timing of, of Kennedy stepping down. I'm sorry, I got him mixed up when I say he was fired. I got him mixed up with Pruitt.
Yeah,
Pruitt was.
this was the
This is
whole
collusion.
conspiracy theory.
Compares. This is his son in Bank and being a board member. And
Was that true?
was it true that he was a board member?
Was it true that this whole conspiracy theory was spun with a thread that was actually, the fabric of truth? Or
Well,
was this just all
well,
grasping?
look. Yeah, I don't doubt that his son is on the board of Bank.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that they made Trump alone. But I don't know why that's different from any other business that they've been doing over all these years. I mean, all of these people, if you go back and take any of them,
Prescott Bush.
they're all connected.
Prescott Bush helped the
Prescott-
Nazis move
yeah.
money to and from
Oh,
America.
they're always connected. You know, all this money is all of it is connected, and all these banks are common people. You know, I don't doubt that there's this relationship, but I with Mueller. I don't know why he resigned. I don't believe that he resigned because somehow or another the Mueller investigation is finding a conspiracy that involves collusion with the Russians because of Bank. And I don't know the relationship between Bank and the Russians, quite frankly. It doesn't make sense to me. But then they keep trying to make a case. They keep trying to make a case. Kennedy resigned, and now they're going through some other conniptions along the way. Remember the first reaction they had out there? Oh my God, Trump is going to pick the successor. Oh my God, we got to change the Constitution.
I know Schumer was trying to get Merrick Garland back into the mix. That was funny.
That's funny.
That's a good one.
And we
Like
got-
he was some kind of liberal
Yeah,
bulwark in the
right.
first place.
Right. And we got to change the Constitution so that chief justices are not appointed, and certainly not appointed for life.
So
And the founding fathers made a mistake when they came up with this idea for appointing supreme justices.
so what's the option?
Change the Constitution.
Elect him? Oh my
Oh,
god.
that's what they say. Elect them.
Mm.
If you don't do it for life, you got to do it for a prescribed period of time.
Yeah.
4 years, 8 years, whatever it is. They say that this is a result of the two-party system. You know, the presumption used to be that it would be a liberal. I'm not so sure that's the. I'm not even so sure where the liberals are, or who they are anymore.
True.
But and if a Republican is often he's going in office, he's going to select a conservative, and if this is a byproduct of the two-party system. But my question is like, in the very beginning, didn't the founding fathers warn us about a two-party system for that very reason? They said it just divides everybody one or the other, and it makes for extreme politics.
And it allows for the obfuscation of any number of misdeeds.
Yeah. That was the warning from the beginning, but we went ahead and had the two-party system, and we won't allow third parties to even exist. We're not Italy or we're not Germany, where they have how many parties? How many parties did Merkel have to make? She had to deal with two. Huh?
Give a nod to other points of view.
Yeah,
Give a nod to other points of view.
yeah. Well, it became serious here recently when the View almost put Merkel out of business, because of this immigration crisis. I don't agree with their positions on these immigration crises, but it certainly shows the dynamics of
Yeah.
Europe and all the rest of it that create these crises.
So I got about 15 minutes.
Okay.
We'll cover Pruitt resigning. That was good, I guess.
What's the difference?
Yeah, that's more so the point. He was replaced by Andrew Wheeler.
Yeah, a lobbyist for the
Coal
coal
man.
industry.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that the people who come into to rule are going to be good for the American people. Lobbyists, and he's a coal industry lobbyist, and yet you stand up and make that kind of a statement.
Dating individuals from Wall Street to,
Well,
head the F
Yeah,
FE, not FEC, but it had
yeah,
his
yeah,
economic policy
yeah,
shop,
yeah.
and
Well,
it
all
just
of it, everything that has to do with economics,
yeah.
including the DOJ now,
Mm.
because he came from Wall Street too. What's his name? Halter. He went back to Wall Street too. But Obama, I don't. You see, my thing is like all of these have done basically the same thing. Some have done it nice, and some have done it not so nice. But it comes out to be the same thing. And we have Obama, who said a lot of nice. He watered down everything that was going to come out of the Paris Accords. And yet, we are complaining because we're not going along with those accords that we had weakened in the first administration and the other. My position on climate change is that we have to go 150% after climate change now with a big voice and a lot of energy. And anything short of that is not going to do the job. And what Obama did was hardly worth it. And what he did on his way out as if to try to leave a legacy.
As if any of his executive orders would hold during this administration.
Yeah. I mean, he had an opportunity. I'm sorry. But when they bought those Jimmy Carter sun, what do you call them? That goes on the roof and collect the sun.
Solar panels.
Solar panels. Thank you. When they bought those solar panels that Jimmy Carter had put up on the White House when he made his statement about climate warming and about renewable energy. And it was a couple of months. Did it say a couple of months before he took them down? He had an opportunity to have a voice change and the acuteness of the problem that's upon us.
Nah.
And he chose not to. Real anti-climate people,
who weren't nice about it.
Who are not nice
and
about it.
That seems like the key denominator here, the key differentiator. One group is nice and smooth and personable about it, and somehow that's more palatable.
Yeah.
But this group is more blatant and in your face. And that's appreciated by another group of people. Like they're like, oh, they're tough. Yeah. They're common sense.
Yeah, they don't credit the worthiness of the idea.
No, it's just the presentation. It's all about the presentation.
Right. Yeah. But it's killing us both ways.
Yeah.
Your grandkids don't eat fish regardless of which way it goes. Whether or not you're nice about it or your grandkids still won't eat fish. Plastic will still outweigh it. Yeah. And oxygen, you know what's happening to the oxygen. And we know the hurricane season is going to start early. Hey. Going to start early. Hey. We don't want to face it. Then we are not the people that God put in charge. He should have put the elephants in charge. Because we are not the ones.
Maybe we shouldn't be.
Well, I had a discussion with some teenagers from the church mission group.
And, yeah, no, you could tell some good stories about that if we had the time. I don't know if it's worth it or not, but there's some good stories.
They're good kids.
Yeah.
But doggone, they sure are American.
Mm-hmm.
And the American narrative is deathly. I mean, on the one hand, ladies and gentlemen, when you go through from 1945 to today, and you can hardly find a year without war, I am become the destroyer. I have become death. Without question. You can't get around it. When that is your legacy, when that is your history, when that is the fact. And when it is the fact that your grandkids can look at you and say, Granddad, why didn't y'all do something about climate change? Yeah. And you have no answer. Yeah. Yeah. Grandpa, we're all dying. Why didn't y'all stop this when you could? And you're going to say,
but Trump.
If that's all you got to say, then that's a weak answer.
I think any answer is going to be a weak answer, despite what you say.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you're not attacking it fully and head on, then nothing's going to change.
Mm.
So I want to save the African expedition till next
Yeah, that's a long
week. It's
discussion.
a good one though.
Yeah. You know what I like to say
Hmm.
before we go? I like to talk real quick about this Novichok. What is the name of that stuff?
Novichok.
Novichok
Yeah.
poisoning that's going on in Salisbury in England.
Hmm.
You know, Russia right now is involved in the Cup games. Have been enjoying Russia and enjoying the games. And these games, if you've been following them, have been spectacular this year.
I've not.
You don't follow them? There are a lot of teams that were predicted to win. They went up against them.
I've not.
You don't follow them? There are a lot of teams that were predicted to win. They went up against some underdogs that were tenacious. And
I've heard good things about Belgium.
Belgium played, right now, look at what you got. You got Uruguay. You know, they could be the champions again. You got England, and this is the one that's interesting. See, because England is one of those countries where they told everybody, don't. They got these soccer gangs up there that are going to do you in.
I saw that story. Yeah,
Hmm?
I read that one.
All that, and then what happens? A lot of people in England don't go up there, and the people who do are sending back these messages about what a great time they are having in Russia and how much they're enjoying Russia and learning about Russia and learning that Russia is not the country they've been told it was all their lives. And they're making these kind of statements. And lo and behold, what happens? The English team unexpectedly makes it to the quarterfinals.
Mhm.
Feel very bad. And they're telling their government off, and especially Johnson and Theresa May. They are telling them off. They are angry that they get some people. They're so emotionally into this game.
I mean, it's like
Yeah.
if football.
But I watched the magic of countries getting along because of football. I watched the magic that was happening in two people. One of them a heroin addict and the other a homeless person are attacked with this Novichok, obviously by the Russians.
Of course.
you know, and the newspapers and the people on television are saying things like Novichok, the poison that the Russians used to poison ex spy, and they talk about the recent poisoning, but they say it as if it were a certainty, as if this was not something that the British people said. Well, it's highly likely that it was the Russians, but we don't have any evidence. But and we don't intend to show you did it.
They never intend to show the evidence.
Never intended because there was no evidence. And I said myself that it was a false flag. Now, and I still maintain that. But I'm also maintaining that this is another one. That this is another one. You're telling me again the same story. Very grade Novichok, which kills in seconds, has now gotten these two people been that you cleaned up from the last one, so-called cleaned up. And you're telling me that the Russians are so doggone stupid that at the time when they have achieved what any country that wants to have, I like the way, for example, when we say things like the Russians, Putin just wants to show off Russia. That's why he wants the FIFA. That's why he wants the World Cup. You know, I said, why does anybody apply for the World Cup? It's not to show off their country. It's not to entertain the world. It's not to be the host nation. Then you're accusing him of doing with his nation like any other normal nation would do. And now that he's pulled this thing off and he's gotten nothing but good publicity around the world from what's happening there, suddenly in England, here we go all over again. And the only problem is that so many of the English people ain't buying it no more. I see the interviews and I see the people talking about their government, not about Putin. You know, the government in England has gotten now a observant. reputation for telling the lie,
Mhm.
that they have been observed and known to tell the lie. And once you are caught and you are the liar, it's time to change your tune and tactics, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, you say that, but the FBI and the CIA and the NSA
Yeah,
or
yeah,
their
yeah. Ain't that the truth?
narrative.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
maybe it's the idea that you should, but not that you will. But
uh,
absolutely right. And unfortunately, that's going to have to end it for us today. But we're just happy to come to you on a Friday, a little bit late, but you know, in full force, in full passion,
yeah,
here studios of the Voice 17104. Just want to thank everyone for listening and for watching to the Reach Out Radio broadcast. For Bill Jameson. Oh, you got something else?
yeah, yeah. I
For
was just gonna say, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you got something
Uh,
out of it. I hope there was something in it worthwhile.
for Bill Jameson, my name is Justin Geist. Thank you for listening and for watching. This has been Reach Out.